All right. There's a lot of big stories coming out of Washington, D.C. involving President Trump, Elon Musk. Uh, Members of the Democrat Party are once again shaming Black voters into voting their way or get the heck out.
Right.
I want to go through all of these big stories. To help me do that, I have April Chapman. April, thank you for joining me again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
So our last podcast together went viral, like 900,000 views. I'm looking forward to having you on again. Just some background. April is the CEO of Standard House Media and the host of the Standard of Truth podcast. She's going to be rebranding that, but I'm going to put a direct link down below so that people can find that easily. I want to get your thoughts on this. Congressman Tim Burchett revealed today that he is worried for the safety of Elon Musk because of everything he's doing over at Doge, and shared why he believes all Democrats are opposed to ending fraudulent abuse of taxpayer money, and even many Republicans. Let me just quote him directly. They're going to push back because you've got congressmen on both sides of the aisle. If they follow the paper trail, it's going to come back to them. You've got their wife or their girlfriend working for some agency, quasi-agency, or some business. This town is as crooked as a dog's leg. What are your thoughts on him saying the reason they're terrified of these audits is it leads back to them picking up money through family members?
Absolutely. I thought it was interesting when we watched President Trump address the Congress and we saw the little placard signs that said Elon steals. That was the Democrat Party projecting. I am absolutely concerned, right? I'm concerned for Elon Musk's safety as well, because he is literally carrying out the mandate that Donald Trump set out the first time, which was to drain the swamp. And the swamp includes so many people on the left and the right, particularly the Uniparty, that has been using the federal government, stealing taxpayer money in order to enrich themselves and to create lasting financial wealth and legacy for themselves. So like Burchett is saying, a lot of them have wives and girlfriends and children or even siblings that are at the forefront of a lot of these front groups, these nonprofit groups, where it's literally money laundering that's happening right before our very eyes. And so you have to take out the threat. If you are interested in maintaining power, extorting the American people of their hard-earned money, and then there's just one individual, Elon Musk, who is going to be the one technologically responsible for being able to dig in deep and say, wait a minute, what are these line items? Where's this money going? Let's follow the paper trail. They want to take him out. This has been the most transparent administration that we have had in my lifetime. And if you think evil people who have been in charge for this many decades and this many years lying to the American people, if you think that they're going to go out without a fight, we are incredibly deceived. In my opinion, this is definitely a spiritual battle, because it's one thing to want to uncover financial impropriety and to follow the paper trail to see who is at the helm of all of these groups. It's another thing when individuals want to physically cause harm to others. They will stop at nothing. Evil knows no bounds and has no restraints. And so now the restraints are off. Those signs saying Elon steals and that Elon is this evil, wicked person, that is them projecting the very sentiment that they embody, which is theft, pillage, exploitation, and they don't want that to end. So that means they have to take someone out, such as Elon Musk. They'll absolutely do that.
Yeah. I noticed there's a lot of people, Jeffries and Schumer, they're saying Elon Musk is digging around in your Social Security to steal your money. Like, how? How is he going to, what is he going to just secretly write himself checks? No, that's what the government's been doing.
Right. And I don't mean to be offensive when I say this, but the average voter, both on the left and the right, they don't really get into the weeds. Many of us are hardworking Americans. We're busy working, trying to provide for our families. And so the Democrats are used to having a low information voter that is not politically engaged, that is staying abreast on what's going on. So they make these statements like, oh, he's getting access to your social security number, as if a social security number of any average American is of value to Elon. Logic would kick in and say, well, what is he going to do with the number? It's not like he needs it to use it for our credit worthiness. He's Elon Musk. He's a billionaire, almost a trillionaire, I would argue. So Americans just need to take a step back and actually listen to the rhetoric and think through it logically and say, that doesn't make any sense. Why would Elon want my social security number? What is he going to do with that information? It's projecting. They have to present this smoke screen so that you don't actually realize that these are the people who have been stealing from you, putting future generations in debt by exploiting our tax dollars and creating all of these front groups and organizations to make them look like they're this humanitarian group that's concerned for the needs of all these other people, when at the end of the day, Americans have been suffering and these people have been enriching themselves. I think we're going to find out why these individuals are career politicians, why they have been able to stay in office, in power as long as they have been, and how their net worth just exponentially increased just out of the blue. We're going to find that out. And I do think we need to protect Elon Musk at all costs.
Yeah. So it's like it took a nightmare and made it worse, right? Like, but the thing that's hard is, did you watch President Trump's State of the Union?
I did. I did.
Such a great speech, masterfully done. But two of the families that he brought, so he brings a child that has survived cancer, really cool Mr. Rogers moment, in my opinion. And then he also has Lincoln Riley, who, we find out later was tortured for 18 minutes until she lost her life. And then the young girl, her name escapes me right now, but President Trump is like, listen, we're going to name like a national reserve with animals off the coast of Texas after her. No Democrats applaud, nobody stands, nobody cheers. Like, really? These young kids, these young Americans were abused, murdered, and like, he's trying to do something right for these families. They can't even show any respect. What were your thoughts on their behavior?
To be honest, I understand that the heart of mankind is depraved and deceitful and desperately wicked. I do believe that. But I also believe that a lot of these Democrats, at their core, some of them wanted to clap. The humanity of some of them wanted to acknowledge that these individuals' lives have been lost and that it is a shame. But when you are controlled, meaning your entire campaign, future, present, is funded by very evil, dark, wicked people, such as your George Soroses and the Pritzkers of the world and the Disneys of the world, they are the ones controlling the purse strings. So they're the ones that are saying, you support what we tell you to support, or your funding dries up. I believe it was a coordinated effort to make sure that none of those Democrats acknowledged the humanity of the Americans that were hurt and injured and lost their lives at the hands of these illegal aliens. It was a concerted effort. They all got the memo in advance. You don't smile. You don't clap. You don't raise a hand. No acknowledgement of this. Because, like I said, these people are trained in evil. And so a lot of these politicians, they've already sold their souls. For 30 pieces of silver, they've been promised something. And in order for them to get those promises, or on the other side of what's been promised to them, they have to go along with the narrative. I am confident many of them have no joy. They don't sleep at night. They are questioning their entire reality. However, when you lie in bed with the devil, he is going to want something from you. And this is why they couldn't clap. One, it demonstrates that the people who are funding them hate America, and they do so by using their money for nefarious means. But more importantly than that, these individuals they don't care about America. The politicians that are being controlled, they actually hate America. And what they don't realize is that when they have been exploited and used, and the devil makes a fool out of them, at the end of the day, they're going to have so many regrets. And it's very sad to watch our nation just at its core be ripped apart by such divisive, less than human like behavior. It was evil to watch those people not acknowledge those young adults who lost their lives.
Yeah, I agree. I've asked several people that are very close to President Trump, like, okay, just shoot straight with me off camera. Was he using a 13-year-old boy with cancer to get brownie points with America? And they're like, no. Behind the scenes, he's constantly donating to people, paying medical bills. Like he's actually a really charitable, tender person. Yes. On camera, though, he has to defend himself, and sometimes he can come across looking mean. But yeah, I was really disappointed. You know, when you said that there was probably a coordinated memo. Mm-hmm. You know, I think you might be right, because earlier that day, 22 senators put out the exact same TikTok, and then they wondered why people are like, oh, wait a minute, you guys have no brains. You don't even think for yourself. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that there were people that were like, how are we not clapping for this child? And yet they sat quiet because they're afraid of their peers pushing back and saying, we're going to censor you. We're gonna run a new candidate in your area. It's really sad that money drives people's behavior the way that it does. Okay, this is something I wanted to get your thoughts on. I read that Democrat leaders are now starting to call new Black Republican voters runaway slaves. It appears that they're doing this in order to shame them back to the Democrat Party or tie them to the evil awfulness of slavery. However, it was the Republican Party under Republican President Abraham Lincoln that ended slavery. From what I've researched, many Black American families were conservative and voted Republican before the murder of JFK and the installment of Lyndon B. Johnson. What are your thoughts on this, and why the name runaway slave?
You know, I love when liberals, particularly Black liberals, attempt to use a word as a pejorative, and then it just doesn't land. It is an honor for me to be called a runaway slave. If you just think about the paradigm of a runaway slave, you have an individual who it's obvious they recognize that they're enslaved and captured as property. And to have the fortitude and the wherewithal and the desire to want to escape by any means necessary, and to do whatever it is that you have to do to run away, makes you the hero of the story. So when a Black liberal calls someone a Black conservative a runaway slave, it's a compliment. Frederick Douglass was a runaway slave. Harriet Tubman was a runaway slave. These are individuals who, against insurmountable odds, figured out a way to go and function in their freedom, because they recognized that they were image bearers made in the image of God, and that man stealing and owning a person against their will as property was wrong. And so I love it. I shame them, because my question is, if I'm a runaway slave, where did I run away from? Where's the plantation? Who's in charge of the plantation? What is the ideology that roots and grounds people to make them want to stay over there? If anything, it takes a lot of bravery. It takes a lot of self-determination, one, to acknowledge the lies that the left has pushed, and then in real time to make a conscious decision to say, no, this ideology is harmful for me. It doesn't help my family flourish at all. I'm going to leave and run away, never to look back. Harriet Tubman said, you know, I freed 1,000 slaves, and I could have freed thousands more if they only knew they were slaves. It is the Black liberal that is the ideological slave that cannot leave the Democratic plantation, even though they're not getting anything of substance or of value in exchange for their loyalty. They are the ones being exploited. They're the ones being made a fool out of. And then the question is, if the Black liberal, they are what I would call, those are those field slaves. Some of them might be house Negroes, if you will, the ones that would go and run and tell massa when someone, they trying to function in their freedom. They want to leave. They would go and snitch. How low down do you have to be to go and snitch on someone who is saying, I don't want to be a slave anymore, and this is my one opportunity to leave? And they try to run away. And then you run back because you want to curry favor with the master, and you go and snitch. Like, those are the sellouts. Those are the actual slaves. And this is why I labor so hard on my channel. A lot of people, particularly the ones that look like me, they find my criticism and my commentary very sharp because it confronts you at its core to make you rethink, what have you been getting for this political loyalty? And then 2, look around at the results. If your community is at the bottom of every socioeconomic category that can be measured, if academically you're at the bottom, if when it comes to family values and being able to maintain healthy familial relationships, if we're at the bottom of that, we're at the top of the prison, school to prison pipeline. If you look at our results, at some point, those of us who run away, who are living these incredible American outcomes and ideals by doing the basics, not by being born, with a silver spoon in your mouth, but by just being a good citizen, getting married before you have children, graduating high school, developing sense of skill and hard work. These are just basic American values. Calling us runaway slaves, we embrace it. I love it. I have no problem with the term because it's really not a pejorative if you really think through what the sentiment is trying to convey. I know there was a lot, but there's just so much there with the shaming. It's so much there. The white liberal will do the same thing, attempt to shame you, because they're the ones that really do believe that they're superior. And so I check them often and let them know there's no one superior to me. God made us equal in his image, and I have no problem competing.
Yeah. Amen. Wow. Okay. Thank you. That was actually eye-opening because, like, white people don't want to be called racist, right? And for me, I look at that and go, ooh, God, I don't want to be called a runaway slave, right? But you made it make a lot of sense. Like, now I'm kind of imagining, right? Like, someone gets pulled over at a police check. Okay. We're getting reports that you're a slave. Where did you run away from? The Democrat Party. Oh, gosh. Okay.
They're acknowledging, they are actually acknowledging that you're owned by someone. Like you said with the police stop, the police is going to ask, who's your master? Who owns you? Well, we need to send you back. I'm owned by no one. I think for myself. I function in my freedom. For them to call us runaway slaves, they're acknowledging that they are slaves and that they are on a plantation, and they're the ones sounding their alarm that some got away. We need to go get them. They're trying to function in their freedom, and we can't have that. They told on themselves. I love it.
Yeah. Snitching by functioning in their freedom. I love that. There is kind of this feeling in the Democrat Party that if you're Black, we own your vote, right? Yes. I'll give you an example, right? President Biden, during his election campaign, says to Charlemagne the God, if you don't vote Democrat, then you ain't Black. Like, hold on, wait a minute. I'm owned by no one. I'm an image-bearing child of God. You guys don't own me. You don't own my vote, but they behave and they use language as if they own your vote.
Yes, he actually said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't Black. He personalized that vibrato. Okay. He said, if you don't vote for me, then you ain't Black. And then he put a little urban colloquialism on it just to make sure he drove the point home. And the fact that we sat there and we watched Charlemagne the God, or the man, I hate calling him that, he didn't push back at all. He didn't push back. And even to this day, he will try to double down and defend it and say, well, it didn't bother me at all. And it's because he's on the plantation. and he's there. And on some level, he might want to go and function in his freedom. But as I tell my audience, he ain't got it in him, right? He doesn't have it in him to do it. The Democrats absolutely do believe that Black Americans are their electoral serfs. And what they do, they are able to propagate such an idea because they lie about their history. What they want people to think that there was this big party switch, and that, the Democrat Party, I actually saw this and I screenshotted it. The Democratic Party has been the party of civil rights for over 200 years. They actually printed that. And I'm like, anyone who knows anything about history knows that that is a flat out lie. They've always been the party of slavery and subjugation and Jim Crow and the welfare state. And now they're the party of DEI, didn't earn it, and begging and whining. And it's just this litany of bad characteristics that no one would want to be associated with. But they try to appeal to the Black American community as if they're the ones that actually care about them, when they're not honest with their history to tell. Well, would you be proud to say, we know we were the party of slavery. We know that for almost 100 years, we were the party of Jim Crow and the KKK. We know that, the welfare state decimated the Black family and pushed harmful ideologies on your women, to now they're aborting their babies, to where the Black community is beyond the rate of replacement. But we care about you. Like, those two messages are diametrically opposed to one another. No one believes them. So they have to continue to, I don't know, I guess, whitewash their history or run away and escape from their history. Because if the truth actually came out and people realized, before the 1964 Civil Rights Acts, we had Republicans pass Civil Rights Acts. There's so much information out there to debunk this myth, but I would argue that they've always believed that the Black American community were their electoral serfs, and that's why they treat them that way. That's why all of these predominantly Black Democrat districts, they never do anything to improve the lives of their constituents. Instead, they're always pointing to those evil white Republicans, who are nowhere to be found, by the way, in these communities. But yet, if they can just continue to make the evil white Republican the boogeyman, then they believe that that allows them to control the narrative. But it's all a lie.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. You kind of answered some of this, but maybe we can go a little bit deeper. Again, our common friend, Vince Everett Ellison, who I love having on my show, he introduced us. He talks about, you shall know people by their fruits, right? You know a tree based on the fruit, right? Like, what kind of tree is this? Oh, well, it's putting off oranges, or it's putting off rotten oranges, right? So, and he says, look at the Democrat Party and look at the fruit of that party. You touched a little bit on this with like education and prison and different things. He genuinely believes that Democrats have pressured Black Christians to give up some of their Christianity in order to be in rapport with Democrat ideology, LGBTQ ideology. What are your thoughts on Vince saying that?
I would absolutely agree with Vince's, the way he masterfully articulates the apostasy that we see happening within I'll call it the ethnic expression of the Black church, just because I don't, believe that there's a white church and a Black church, but rather you have congregations that are ethnically expressed in a particular way. The apostasy that we are seeing within the ethnic expression of the Black church is absolutely being done at the hands of apostate Black preachers who are in bed with the Democratic Party. The Democrats have figured out a way to find, not to corrupt, but to find already morally bankrupt, corrupt, sinful, apostate men and women, and then entice them with the lure and of the promise of, we'll give you money, we'll give you this, we'll make sure that we take care of you and put a whole lot of bread in your pocket. But this is the type of messages that we need you to push to your congregation. The Black American community, historically, we've been a people of faith. And so what I would say is that a lot of these politicians have realized a long time ago that a huge percentage of the Black voting bloc, in order to get to a large amount of Black Americans in large numbers, you go straight to the church. And so what they do is they use the influential, morally bankrupt, already apostate Black preacher, entice him with money, and then in turn, the Black preacher introduces these wicked anti-God, anti-Christian ideologies to their church congregation. And surprisingly, not surprisingly, but it works. If your local church pastor is someone that you look up to, you have this level of respect for him, he may have baptized you, baptized your children, you've been a member of this church, and he's been this upstanding pillar in the community for so long. If he comes to you and he says, I think this candidate right here is doing great things and we should support him, without fact checking, because you trust him and he has credibility in your life as your spiritual leader, you are more inclined to do whatever he says. Here's the kicker, though. Christianity is one of those religions that you can be a Christian in name only, but like Vince says, you shall know them by their fruit. Overwhelmingly, a lot of these churches are apostate. That's why when you go in, you're listening to a lot of racially charged rhetoric. They're not preaching the gospel of Christ. They're preaching a Black liberation theology that roots its arguments in loathe and liberation and victimhood. That's what you're going to hear. And so Vince is right that it is important for all believers, Christians who claim the name of Christ, to don't examine by the outside, right? Our unity with Christ is not on the basis of us looking the same way, the way our melanin is expressed, but rather our unity is based on who it is who has redeemed us and purchased us with his blood. And so the Democrats, like I said, have figured out a way to use the already morally bankrupt. He's already spiritually deficient. And they use these individuals because these individuals have built large churches, medium, some small, but the lure and the incentive is money and other things, which, like I said, the love of money is the root of all evil. So we are absolutely seeing a spiritual decline within the Black expression of the Black church that concerns me greatly. And this is why I talk so much about it, because it's time for us to unify on the basis of truth and not just on the basis of what you and I look like.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. I love that.